Welcome to the From the Ground Up podcast. This is a podcast for Dow Smith Company's employees, clients, and friends. And I'm Taylor Loyal, the host of From the Ground Up. Dow Smith Company is a design builder here in Smyrna, Tennessee. We work on commercial facilities, medical facilities, and churches. And today we have our CEO, Joey Rhyne, on today to talk about the design build process and why we use that. So welcome in, Joey.
Thanks for having me, Taylor. I'm glad you're the host now. You've let me and Dow off the hook, and we can just do our thing, and you can do yours.
I still gonna make you talk a whole lot, though.
That's fine.
So
that's fine. At least we don't have to, carry the wagon, so to speak. We don't have to.
Well, so Joe, you and I think have probably had practice having this conversation off mic many times, because it's one of the things that I feel like we talk about a lot. But for people who don't know, the way we do things isn't the traditional way of doing things. So maybe let's take a step back and just talk about what is the traditional way a contractor or a construction company would work,
or the design process would work.
Yeah, even there too. Well, I guess the traditional way would be those are separate things, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. The traditional method of design and construction is the owner, developer, the owner who's ever needing the work done would contact a design professional, usually an architect. At times, in a government setting, a civil engineer. The civil engineer or the architect would then go out and hire all of the design professionals, and they would work with the client to design the project. And when the plans were done, 100% complete, and sometimes before then, they would issue the drawings to qualified bidders, hopefully. And they would solicit bids on the plans and specifications that are almost complete at that time, if not ready for permit at a minimum. The design build method is something that's been out for probably 25 years now. I've been doing it for 20, and it is so it's not new news. But I do believe it is best practice. And it's where the owner contacts a general contractor or even a design consultant, and the team is assembled together. So it's like a three-legged stool. You have the owner or developer, the business owner who's in need. You have the design consultants, and you have a qualified builder. And you all walk through that project through the design process as a team. And we've developed, and the industry has developed stages of that design, but it's more of a collaboration rather than an isolated venture with either design consultants and the owner. But there's different variations, but that's kind of the pure method where everyone's at the table as soon as possible.
Gotcha. Yeah, you always say it can't call us too early, really.
You can't call us too early.
So you said you've been doing it for 20 years. Is that when did Dow Smith Company decide this is the best way to do this?
Well, shortly after I started in 2004,
you came in and said, "Hey, everybody, look,
I came in, and Dow had already ventured out into the design build world, and I had done a project or two. But Dow and I both had experienced lots of pain using the original method. It leads to a lot of change orders, a lot of frustration, and we got tired of being having to be the low bidder. You don't choose the cheapest surgeon to do your surgery. So why would you have the same philosophy when you're spending millions of dollars on your facility? So
Yeah, and for some people, it's maybe the only facility they'll ever build.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So we found out really early the hard way that we didn't want to be in the what we call the traditional method, the design, bid, build method. We wanted to be a part of the team early. A lot of times in the traditional method, you end up pointing fingers at each other. It's adversarial. Uh, owner is not of their own decision, but they're forced to pick sides between the design team and the contractor. And we wanted to be on everybody to be on the same team. We wanted to be a partnership and a collaboration and a team atmosphere to where we all float together and we all sink together. And there's not an adversarial relationship, and we all are in it together for the good and the bad, because no matter what, building can be stressful. There's no such thing as a perfect design. We're all in practice in our professions. So we've found this to be the best method. And this is not an experiment anymore. The design build, for many years, felt like I was selling an idea that hasn't been proven. But the design build method, the process, it's a proven process. It's not an experiment. It's not new news. It's now best practice. And
that's cool to hear you say.
It's great. It's great to be on the other side of it. The message is out. People are believing. When the government starts believing that it works and they start using it, then it works. It works.
That's cool. Now, how did that, you've sort of coined and have in front of you there the Dow Smith way, which is our process of how we do things. Was that born out of the design build idea?
It was.
And the design build structure?
It was. We have taken something that's not proprietary, something that other folks all over the country have used, and we felt like we are perfecting it. It's not a perfect process, but we have tailor made it to our personality, to our experience. And we've just developed it over time for our contacts here in Middle Tennessee.
Cool. And let's go through we can just cite the top four there, but
Sure.
You have, I can tell you without looking at it,
Yeah.
You got vision collection,
Yeah.
pre-construction services, construction, and post-construction.
Right.
And if we get all those things right, the project's going to go well, right?
It's going to go well. And, I equate the design process kind of like it building a building. If you get the foundation right, you're off to a really good start. So the design process and the vision collection with the owner, assembling the team, and getting that phase one due diligence and schematic drawings correct are really the foundation. That's really where the hard work is done. The early digging, the early concrete pours and reinforcement. It's much the same way in design. If you can get started off on the right foot and you get the right information from the owner and you collect the correct data and everyone's in agreement before you start spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on drawings that are over budget and can't be used. You're right. It's hard to get it wrong when you start out correctly.
I quote you all the time about, I heard you say once that you'd been in many offices where the CEO or the pastor or whoever the person was you were speaking with had a set of plans that was rolled up and sitting in the corner that never got built because they kind of got ahead of themselves, right?
Right. I was just working on a proposal for a church across town before y'all walked in this room. And one of the things we do really early, whether you're a church or a business owner or a physician, is we want to determine the financial feasibility of the project. And that's just not the question of, hey, what can you afford, but also what do you need? And what's happened so many times is someone can come in and they can sell a pretty picture, they can promise the moon, but until you do the work of both, yes, you do have to determine what's financially feasible and what you can afford, not what the bank will lend you. Those are two different things, but also what your needs are, so that the project isn't designed way over budget, and you've got a set of plans once you get bids in the traditional method that are we've ran up against $300,000 problems, $500,000 problems, $1 million problems. I had to don't make $1 million mistake. We beat that drum.
Yeah.
But it's sad. It's sad when something's over designed and you throw money out the window, and that either people have given or that people have earned.
I've had, I was telling Dow, I've had people call me and say, got a piece of land picked out. I've got these plans done. I've got this step. Probably need to call y'all soon, and it's like, well, you probably needed to call us 6 months or a year ago.
That's right.
And that's been, as I've learned how we do things and tried to communicate things, I always look at like Integrity Eye Care or Leach Family Dentistry or some of the clients that we've had, and you probably have many that come to mind, that they literally just had something scribbled on a piece of paper, and you were able to walk them through that whole process. So as we talk about what's the difference between sort of the traditional way and this proven process now that we have of the design build way or the Dow Smith way, what are some of the things that could go wrong in the, by not just coming to us first and just saying, hey, here's this sketch that I drew on this napkin, you guys help me turn it into a reality, versus getting halfway down the road and then kind of having to turn around?
Well, I think the most important thing is contractors know what things cost. It's no offense to great, wonderful design professionals. We work with many of them, and they're wonderful professionals. They're really good at their jobs, but they're good at their jobs. And unfortunately, contractors spend your money. As hard time as Greg Freeman at New Vision Church likes to give me, we are the ones who have to do the work, but we're the ones who over and over again have learned the hard way of what things cost. So yes, we want to determine really early. One of the big things we want to catch is the building in the right place? Is it at the right elevation? What's it going to be? I show up at a site, I automatically think of, how am I going to get power to it? How am I going to get water to it? How am I going to get sewer to it? Does it need to be sprinkled? What's the zoning? So many times I show up to a piece of property, and I hate to be the grim reaper, but I always look to see, okay, what's wrong? What is not right, and what's not going to work? I want to identify the red flags and the hurdles. Obviously, the owner's already done a lot of work before they call us. Just say, hey, this feels like a good spot. It's enough property. But there's more than just, does it feel right? Is it in the right location? There's a lot that goes into it that property needs that we can bring to the table for feasibility and to not make those mistakes early that can cost a lot of money. We've had owners buy land at auction, close on land, and it turns out they can't even use it because they don't have the proper utility services there to even do the work. So not only are they stuck with property that they've spent good money on, but they're now paying property taxes in perpetuity for the land. So that's pretty heartbreaking, and I don't want people to do that when just a free consultation, so to speak, or a 10-minute phone call can save you a lot of heartache.
Yeah, one of the things I love that you always say is we worry early. And it's one of the things I love about you is it's not, you said grim reaper. Yeah. That's maybe a little too harsh, but I've heard you deliver bad news to people. And I think in the moment, that's a hard conversation to have. But I think later people appreciate this guy was upfront with me. I was talking to Sean Hackinson at the alley the other day, and he said, I've only met Joey maybe 3 or 4 times. He goes, but I can just tell he is a stand-up, straightforward, honest dude who will just tell it like it is. And he's like, I've had so many people, I don't want to put words in Sean's mouth about other people, but
he won't mind.
But how about I say it this way? We have had clients who have told us other people promised us that they could do this, they could do that. And then when it really kind of comes down to getting it done, it didn't pan out. And I love that you're just straight up with people and just tell them, like, I've done this long enough. I know kind of here's what you're up against. You mentioned the things, the due diligence types of things from structural standpoints or land standpoint or water and sewage and all those.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also, with a lot of the clients, particularly because we deal with a lot of churches, there's also the part of the process where you have to get buy-in from not just one person or even one board. Maybe it's almost a whole congregation that has to agree with what the plan is. So, we can get into the 3-day charrette and things like that, but how do you, I always say that before you build a building, you have to build a consensus.
Yeah.
So how do you do that on the front end?
Well, I think you've seen me.
Yep, I've seen
in
you
one
in
of those
action.
church business meetings before when I was getting grilled. But I do think kind of the key issue there is we want to have all the data, whether it's a physician who is married and has a wife who's partners with them in that practice, or it's a larger practice with many physicians, or it's a bank with a board, or a church with 200 people or 2,000 people. We need input from them. We need input because we know that when they have been heard and that input's been received, I feel like people get aggravated when they don't feel like they've been understood and they've been heard. So one of the first things we do in the vision collection stage is we make sure we hear and listen to everything the client wants us to know and hear, because they know their business better than we do. They know their needs better than we do. They know their church better than we do. So we don't want to tell them how to run their business. We want to help them run their business. We want to help them accomplish their mission of whatever organization it is, and help them achieve their purpose. So we really feel like we're a partner. We become partners with them and for them to achieve their goals and their dreams. But first it comes from listening. And so in order to build a consensus, you really have to make sure everyone at the table, the decision makers, have been heard. And we want to make sure everyone's been heard and their needs have been digested and questioned. And we'll push back sometimes on some things, but with humility and understanding. But we feel like if folks have been heard and we listen to their needs, it is a terrific start. And then after that, it's a little bit easier to earn trust, right? And it's a little bit easier to build a consensus when everyone hears the needs at the table. And that goes for partners too, not just the builder. When we ask questions and the husband and wife, the business owners, the physicians, the church leaders are all at the table and they actually hear each other. A lot of times it's like, I wish I would have met before we came. But
now you're a marriage counselor.
Then we get into some tough questions. But what we've come to realize is that if we can be the person who asks the hard questions, who talks about finances or tough design decisions, we can help navigate that with them. And does it get tense and awkward at times? It sure does, but it's really good to get those things out of the way early. But when the people at the table, the decision makers, hear the other decision makers and the people who have influence and impact, man, you build a strong trust and strong relationships, and everyone's united and aligned. That alignment, because
you kind of had that battle on the front end, right?
Yeah, and when people have alignment, then the rest is easy when you know where you're going. But it gets a little messy there in the beginning as you're trying to decide what's the right thing to do and what do we really need to do, considering what the feasibility is of everything that we have: our people, our space, the finances, and really a lot of times it's time frame. So it's always, nothing's ever the same. Every experience is different.
And you're such a master at, is that a thing that's natural to you, or have you practiced, did you get better over time at just having those tricky conversations with people?
Well, I wake up every morning feeling like I'm over my head, but I do think you do learn some diplomacy. And again, doing it 20 years, you do gain in confidence a little bit, but really trying to help find the common ground with folks and figuring out how to solve issues and getting to the root issue. What's your real pain? What are we really trying to solve here? Is really, really important. So yes, I mean, we have gotten better. Our team's gotten better at it. Our design consultants have gotten better at it. and we've all grown.
I think it's things as simple as, Michael Shirley told me, I can't remember if it was on the last podcast or just in another conversation we had, but about a conversation you two had where they were trying to decide with the kind of the garage space and whether to do it or not. And he said, no, Joey said, if you don't do it now, you're probably never going to do it. And if you decide to do it later, it's going to cost more and really just makes more sense to do it now. But I've also seen you on the other side of it where you're like, you really don't need that. And I don't think you may never need that. And so, for clients, like in their case, that may be the only building they build, but you're doing this day in, day out. So you can kind of see, I always feel like you have a crystal ball where you can kind of see into the future with a lot of things. But how do you advise them on that without stepping on toes, even if you know what the right thing is to do?
First, you think about budget. Is it something they could afford to do? A lot of times you get to a point in the project where this is the absolute minimum we have to have in order to move or to build this. And then that's it. Other times, like you said with Michael Shirley, it's not always so clear. But I felt like in Michael Shirley's instance, discerning what his budget was like, what he was really wanting to achieve in his mission, and having those patients be able to pull in on a rainy day and stay in their car. And to be honest, it balanced the building having the garage on the other side. So great. There was an aesthetic, something to be considered there, budget, and really their mission and what they were trying to achieve from being a fear-free veterinary hospital. So it turned out to be the right decision. I'm not always right. We do hopefully give very little bad advice, but there are times to where, when a doctor comes in and they're wanting, we'll say something on their wish list. Sometimes it comes down to, you don't really make money having a nice corner office. You make money in exam rooms, and that's how you produce revenue. So a lot of times, we need to add another exam room and make room for another provider rather than having a workout facility or an exercise room for the clinic. Those things are important for the well-being of their employees, but you do have to pay the bills first. So those are things we can bring to the table and help them discern. And when they look at that cost per square foot, especially today, and their debt service, they're like, well, I better make sure the revenue's in place before we start down our wish list.
Well, like I hate talking about money, and I don't think I'm alone in that. I think it's a tricky subject for a lot of people. But one of the things that you've said that I think probably does give our clients a lot of comfort is that you should design to the budget, not budget to the design. And I think that's such a good way to guide people. You know how much roughly that you have to spend. So let's try to get you as many of those things as we can versus promising you everything and then you having to try to go find the money to do it. Was that something that you figured out kind of along the way as well?
And it goes back to the experience and pain we've had of projects that have come in over budget, that we've received, and a client getting frustrated, not just losing the money of redesign, but the time. So the cost of going back and redesigning is more than just a monetary cost. There's also time loss, which in the long term affects money, because you got to get moved in and you got to pay extra rent on a lease you had. And then you got to pay interest on this money you've already spent. So we live and die by the budget step. We try to do the budget step as often as the client will let us, at least twice. 3 times really. You have the conceptual budget, you have either the schematic or design development budget, and then of course you have the final budget. So we do that at least 3 times. We've done it at least 4 times with some clients, but we always come back to hey, let's make sure we're staying on budget. What about this? What about this product? What about this material? So we do come back. So designing to the budget is, if it's not first on the list, it's a 1B.
What is first on the list?
Providing a great experience.
for I guess for as many people in the organization
Yeah.
as possible.
Yeah. And our team. It's important because, I've evolved a little bit over the years to where, we're got to sell the job, got to get this design build done. Let's get something started. And really what we've developed over down, I have helped develop and I feel like it's different than anyone else in Middle Tennessee, is a great design build experience. There's people who do it all over the country. But I don't know that anyone does it better than us. And I can say that now because I'm not the one who's doing just me doing anymore. I've got a great team and great people. So we're really selling an experience now, and it's not the same with everyone. But we believe you're going to have the best experience with us. And but that goes for my team. Our company is built on our people, and we have great people. But we also have great subs and vendors and our design consultants. And they're great people. We have great partnerships, and I want the experience to be good for them. And I know if it's good for us and good for our design consultants and subs and vendors, guess who's going to have the best experience? Our client.
Yeah.
Our client. So building can be stressful. Building can be painful. It can be laborious. It takes a lot of time and effort in addition to running your business or leading your church. But we can minimize that. We can minimize that both in the emotional turmoil and pain, but also in financially, like we've talked about so much. So we feel like we provide some help and protection. We can provide a partnership and team atmosphere. And most importantly, a lot of times what I found over the last 20 years is owners feel alone and isolated during the traditional method. And even sometimes when they're doing a design build, quote unquote, with someone else, because no one's talking to them, no one's communicating with them. The architects designing in a tunnel, excuse me. The design consultants aren't listening to them. The contractor, the design builder won't return their calls or the texts. So we want them to have an experience where they feel heard and listened to where our eyes are open and our ears are open and they're being heard, and they're getting feedback and a prompt responses. So we don't want them to be in a silo. We don't want our team members to be on a silo. We pride ourselves on great communication in all the formats that's available to us today. But we want that experience to be better here than anywhere else. And that's because we've got great people. I was with, I toured a church today that we're just finishing. And I called the leader in charge with the church and told him how excited I was for him and how proud I was the project turned out so well. And he said the same. And he said, I knew when I met with you and Dow that y'all are great people. And I hope that your people were good people. You've got great people. And I'm really proud of that. It's something that Dow has given me and passed on to me. It starts with Dow, but it's something he and I and all of our team members throughout the years. And Cindy Smith always says Gary Grisham was the beginning of the good. And he was a good person. He was a great man. And that's just continued with each person that we've added, Trey and Shauna. And I could go down the list of all 29 or 30 of us, but it extends to our team members that aren't employed here at Dow Smith as well. So we want people to have a great experience. And that's really the difference between us and everybody else.
That's perfect. If you don't have anything else to say, I want to end right there because that is perfect. I knew coming into this conversation you're going to have some jewels for me, but you said it better just then. All the conversations that we've had about this topic is probably one of my favorite topics, and I can tell even from the last time you and I have talked about this, you've thought about it more.
I have gotten a lot of. With our growth and the people that who've taken a risk and come to work here, it's allowed me time to process and digest and think about what's really important and what I want the next 20 years to look like. So I'm excited about it. Dow and I are energized, sometimes too energized for the others around us, but we bring the energy and the heat, and everybody's hair just gets burnt off. But we're keeping it going.
That is awesome. Well, thank you for being on the podcast
Thank you
today.
for having me. It's good to be back.
Thank you to everybody listening. If you need more information on Dow Smith Company, go to dowsmith.com or check us out on Facebook or Instagram, or you can be one of our 19 followers on Twitter.
X.
On X.
On X. Thank you, Yvonne.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you, Taylor.